Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 7th business meeting of the Webster Board of Education. Would you all please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And can we please have a motion to move out of executive session? Jan?
In a second.
And a second by Linda. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. First order of business is to review the agenda. Are there any changes anyone recommends, or are we okay? Move forward and accept the agenda as written. So moved and by Linda. Thank you. The Board of Education invites the public to comment on matters regarding the school district. The public comment section of the meeting is a time for the Board of Education to listen. As a courtesy, we ask that you limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. Comments naming specific personnel should be addressed privately or in writing to the board in order to protect individuals' rights. Matters that would infringe upon student privacy will not be addressed in this public forum. With that being said, is there anyone present who would like to address the board?
Yes, Cindy.
And Mr. Ostrowski? Thank you. Would you please come to the front mic and introduce yourself? Really loud. You can sit. Please do. Take a seat.
My name is Nicholas Ostrowski. I currently have 3 children at Clem South, and I'm opposed to the change in start time for the elementary children. I feel that the announcement of the change was premature and that there were far too many unanswered questions that we are still currently dealing with. I will start out by saying that from the research provided by the district, the change should benefit our adolescent children. After reading through some of the research, it should be advantageous if the students truly take advantage of the extra time that they are given. The biggest negative that I can see for our older students is losing 2 full weeks of classroom instruction. In all of the research provided by the district, I fail to see the same considerations being given to those that science has proven need more sleep, our elementary students. One pediatrician's personal opinion is not a just comparison to the level of research provided to show the benefits for the older children. In October, I had a conversation with Mr. Gamina, which stated that I felt that our elementary age children are being sacrificed for the benefit of the older students. His response was based on his own personal thoughts and feelings, not the same type of science being used to institute the change. Mr. Gamina telling me that his daughters did fine with an earlier start time is not a scientific study, but by that same standard, I assume that they have also done well with getting up early since they have left elementary school. Every family is different, just as every child is different. While I understand that there are many children that can get up early with no problem, the science that you have presented says that these elementary students need more sleep than the older students, and with this change, they are having that taken away from them. While trying to get answers to this change, why this change is being made, I did reach out to a couple of the board members that voted to approve this change to get their personal take on what specific research they saw that proves that this change will benefit our elementary students. The response that I received from Mr. Suffoletto was not sufficient and dismissive, as he deferred my questions to Mr. Gamina and Mr. Wall. Again, I asked Mr. Suffoletto about what research he had personally seen, not what Mr. Wall and Mr. Gamina feel. The response that I received from Mrs. Gorowski was not what I would call adequate either, again, as I was largely dismissed and deferred to the superintendent's office. With the lack of answers from those approving the change, tells me that there was little to no research to show that this will benefit our elementary students, only a lack of accountability for those making the decisions. In conclusion, I'll leave you with a quote from a recent letter from the superintendent's office that I feel should apply to this and every situation the board faces. What I know for certain is that our district will continue to place the health and safety of all students at the forefront of every decision that we make on behalf of our families.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you for being here.
Yep.
Do we have other guests? Welcome. Please come forward if you're wishing to address the board. Thank you. Good
My
evening.
name is David Munson. I'm a teacher at Plank South Elementary, but I'm actually here to talk about my own children's experience with an early start time, and over the last year, how that actually changed. My students attend Rush Henrietta School District, and recently they switched their buildings. They used to be a K-5 building like Webster, and now they switched to a K-3 building and a 4-6 building, which actually directly affected the times that the kids start school. They used to all start early, as we are moving to next year. And my kids were up, they were going to school, they get home, they had time to do their homework, do their activities, and go to bed at a reasonable time. However, now that my one child's school, that's 4 through 6, has switched to a later start time, it's actually directly affected our family in an awkward way where he gets home later, his activities, he's eating dinner, his activity starts, and he's actually staying up later because he's got 40 to 50 minutes of homework. So if his school still started at the early time, it would have fit much better into a family schedule where they're doing activities and trying to complete their homework at night. So when the time change first started, I wasn't for or against it, but due to living it in the recent past year with my own 2 children, I definitely moved towards supporting the time to go into an earlier start, just so the kids have time to do their homework, have dinner, and do an activity and still go to bed, because we all know how many activities the kids are involved in these days. And the earlier start time allows that for the younger children.
Thank you for being here. Jeff Eckler, I believe we have one more person wishing to address the board. Thank you.
First of all, thanks for allowing me to speak here tonight. For those of you guys that don't know, my name is Jeff Eckler. I'm a lifelong Webster resident. I have 2 elementary school children in the district. I'm a slightly below average social studies teacher at Schrader. I coach JV baseball. So as a father and a coach, I'm going to be impacted in this decision in multiple ways. So I feel like I have a unique perspective to offer the board and anybody else in the community. While I wasn't part of the committee that conducted the research that ultimately helped the board lead to this decision, in the 14 years I've been teaching and researching education, there are 2 incontrovertible facts that have always seemed to improve students in education. And those 2 things have always been smaller class sizes and a later start time. Keeping class sizes smaller has always been a budget issue and gets regular attention. But the later start time, which is backed by plenty of studies, specifically at the high school, is often ignored because of the logistical headaches it creates. I kind of expected Webster would be no different, being a district of 11 buildings and 8,400 students, that this would be too difficult, create too many complaints. But I was pleasantly surprised by the decision, and I remain very optimistic about it. In my view, we're throwing a haymaker punch. As a kid, I grew up in the 80s. I watched a lot of Rocky movies, and I love haymakers. And like all haymakers, they come with their share of risk, but are effective if they land. And I'm excited to support and have always kind of supported bold decisions. Over the past few months since it was announced, I've done my own straw polling from friends, colleagues, neighbors, parents. Had a wonderful conversation with the guy who sold us our Christmas tree. And like, some of the few members that have spoken before us, I hear mixed reviews, and a lot of things seem to be based on everybody's micro view of how it's going to impact their family routines, family budgets, coaching, and the list goes on. As an educator, I'm always reminding myself to see the glass half full, to stay in the center, and remain optimistic. So the pessimist in me is worried about my son, who's still asleep at 7, 10 a.m., and whether or not he will adjust. I've heard from parents who share similar concerns. I wonder if the high school student's health will improve the way the research supports. I've listened to the misunderstanding community members have that believes the school kids are just going to stay up, a couple hours later. I think about bus transportation. I've spoken with coaches who have major concerns. But I remind myself it's a haymaker punch.
And if it lands, it could transform the district and possibly the county. So, if you have the patience, I encourage everyone to find the optimism in this decision beyond the primary health benefits. Last Monday, it was unseasonably warm. I watched my kids get off the bus. The entire neighborhood was outside. And after about 45 minutes, everybody had to go somewhere. They had to go to hockey. They had to go to religion. And I just thought, man, if next year they get out at 2:30, they could have that time back. So, yeah, it's going to be dark when they get on the bus, but it's going to be light for hours afterwards. So I'm still remotely optimistic that our PLCs at the high school are going to be in the morning, and I'm not going to be walking in with students anymore. I'm going to be greeting them at the doorway. I'm excited that the coaching situation can and will adjust, as it always has, to multiple things. I know people are concerned about the space and the financial pressure of WonderCare program, but I'll remind all of them I've got over 40 seniors who I would trust to babysit my own kids. And I think about how we could build a community around that. So again, I'm optimistic that all of this will change, and the glass doesn't have to be half empty. So in closing, I think it's just important to remind everybody that, like in all public policy decisions, there's pros, cons, trade-offs, and especially unintended consequences. And this decision will be no different. Anyone who thinks it's going to be a smooth ride or an easy fight is mistaken. But the way I choose to see it is that we are in round one and through a haymaker punch. And if it lands, we'll win. And if it doesn't, I hope the staff, the community members, and everybody gives us a chance to stay on our feet to finish the fight. And in a year or two from now, if we can't stand or are too battered and bruised to continue, perhaps we throw in the towel. But at least we threw the first punch. And I love that this district is taking a shot to help kids, and I'm proud to support that. So, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Jeff.
Moving on to our student liaisons. Do we have our student liaisons with us this evening? What's going on?
I think yeah, she's probably got a phone call from Debbie. Hi, ladies.
Welcome. Thank you for being here. Who would like to start? Okay. We'll have to keep track.
Good evening, everyone. I hope that you're all having a great start to your February and enjoyed the few warm days we had just a few days ago. There is so much happening in Thomas this time of year, as it is the start of third quarter and we are officially halfway through the school year. Now, I don't typically like to talk about things that involve me in these presentations, but for those of you who don't know, I'm the chapter president for a program called Best Buddies here at Thomas. It's an organization that helps form friendships among students with and without disabilities. Recently, my buddy Brandon and I were asked to present in front of the Golisano Foundation. Brandon has Down syndrome. We were able to talk about what the program has done for us and for our families and the positive impact it's had on both of our lives. It was a great experience for the both of us, and it provided Brandon with a great public speaking opportunity, and he did fantastic. Another club I would like to talk about is the newest club here at Thomas called Positivity in Action. Thomas Junior Sophia Bosco decided one day that she felt that she needed to take more action in our community and work to keep the conversation going. So far, we've had 2 meetings and are getting together every week discussing a new topic and deciding how we can take action as students. We are very excited to see how this club will help to make Thomas and the community a more positive place. Speaking of positivity in action, we are starting a food cupboard at Thomas. Here at Thomas, we're working to start it up for students and families that may need a little more support. We are starting to collect items such as canned food, cereal, peanut butter and jelly, and hygiene products. We are so proud of Titans Ian Avery, Jonathan Reeve, and Mrs. Small for getting this started. In addition to them, we are also very proud of some of our Titan art students. 62 awards were recently bestowed upon our students in the 2019 Scholastic Art Awards. We are so delighted to have such gifted individuals here. While our art students were hard at work, so were some of our business students. Teacher Mr. Dusha was able to arrange for the students involved in the Young Entrepreneurs Academy to be able to take part in a roundtable event where they were able to interact with some of our local business leaders. All the students involved got a ton out of the experience. Another great opportunity that our Thomas students had just yesterday was a cappella group Ball in the House came to Thomas and worked with some of our vocal students. They were also very generously performed 2 free concerts, one during 7th block and one yesterday evening. We are so grateful to the group for coming and hanging out with us yesterday. Transitioning over to sports, the Thomas cheer team competed in the Winter Invitational at Victor Saturday. The varsity team finished in first place and were named grand champions of the event. The boys basketball team played Brockport Monday night and came away with a win 51-47. The girls were in Wayne Monday evening to take on the Eagles, but unfortunately fell short, losing by 5 points. The Titan Wrestlers are sectional champions. The boys wrestling team won the sectional championship this past weekend, and all wrestlers who place 6th or higher will be wrestling at SUNY Brockport for state qualifiers this weekend. Our Thomas hockey team came back from their Saturday game with a win of 5-2, and the track team took part in the Monroe County League Championship this past Saturday. Sophomores Sean Smith and junior Monique Hardy were county champs in the weight throw. We are so proud of all of our very talented Titans. That's all from me, and I hope you all have a great evening.
Thank you
Hi.
very much.
So, recently we've had many students who have received honorable mention for this year's Scholastic Arts Award. Our Math League placed 7th overall in the county this past Tuesday at Fairport High School. Our Masterminds team beat Fairport in our most recent competition. And our Pirate Toy Fund was very successful this holiday season, which was led by Mr. Pack.
We have a new optics science course that will be visiting MCC next week to understand what career paths are available in the growing field. Our musical Anything Goes opens tonight and will have performances Friday and Saturday this weekend. Mr. Welker and Miss Nichols as Algebra 6-4 students have all worked really hard this year and have all earned their first two credits for this year. And our One Warrior Week is coming up and we are very excited. Link Crew has been meeting the last couple weeks and it will take place from March 18th to March 22nd. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. Appreciate hearing from you. And on to our board liaisons. Thank you, Sue. Hi. Come on up. I don't see BTSA. Okay.
Yeah, I think they had
A lot to do.
so I have some highlights from Webster teachers across the district. Plank South held its yearly Family Literacy Night. This year's theme was Reading Around the World in 90 Minutes. Teachers shared songs, recipes, crafts, and games so that families could come travel to places like Haiti, Japan, China, Germany, and Latin America. Families had passports stamped and plane tickets in hand to celebrate culture and literacy in many languages. At Thomas, Leah Peterson's Holocaust and Genocide Studies class created activities to foster team building and community with Peggy Green's 1214 Academic Life Skills class, focusing on getting rid of the we versus they mentality, which is a theme in that social studies class, and they all realized how much they have in common. Stephen Fedor had a competition between his 4 earth science classes at Schrader. They brought in plastic bags from Wegmans, Target, to weave together to make mats for the homeless. The class that brought the most bags won a pizza party, and in the end they collected 1,090 bags. And I'm not sure yet how many mats they were able to make with that, but any unused bags were donated to the care room to continue the work. Also at Schrader, Eileen Connolly is piloting a community reading project with 10th graders where they select a short book and get paired with a community member. They're looking for 26 community members to work with students by reading weekly and writing short journal responses, and they'll end with a luncheon where the partners meet. So they're reaching out, and if anybody wants to participate, you can contact Ms. Connolly. Geotech classes at Schrader and Thomas, co-taught by Mr. Magus and Mr. Tucciarello, are building a storage shed for the OWL program at Schlegel Road, a timber structure outdoor classroom at Thomas. They're making a rolling coat closet for a coat exchange at Schrader and converting an unused closet at Thomas into a food pantry, along with many other projects. Kelly Stevens, the art teacher at State Road, is working with 2nd graders to create plaster animal sculptures. They're created from and connected to the 3-dimensional shapes that the students are learning about in math. And each student created a basic sketch of a realistic animal with 2 or more legs. The students had to make a shopping list of the three-dimensional shapes they would need to build the animal, and then used recycled materials like old pencils, boxes, and tubes to tape together. And the second graders just plastered their animals and will start painting them and adding details. Marnie Weinman, a kindergarten teacher at Plank North, has a game day with her class once a month, and parents come in and guide and lead the games. They have small groups to teach social skills about how to play fair, be a good sport. Academics are included, and they play Chutes and Ladders, counting to 100, Candyland, counting spaces and learning colors, Zingo, reading and using picture clues, Memory for short-term memory, Uno for numbers and colors, and all of the games require fine motor skill practice as well. Fifth grade teachers at State Road are currently teaching biodiversity in the rainforest and asking their students to ponder the big question, why do scientists study the rainforest? Students are working to answer that question by reading articles, finding text evidence, and explaining why that evidence is reason to study the rainforest. They've already presented their findings in a science talk with peers, which they will soon be modeling to fourth grade classes. And the unit will wrap up with a performance task where students will create their own rainforest adventure ebook. Beyond all those highlights of what the teachers are doing in their classrooms, WTA has 8 brave souls participating in the polar plunge this Sunday. A small group, but at last check earlier this week, they had raised over $2,000. And we're also excited to share that the Oak Tree nominations have been made, and there are almost 30 nominees. The committee will be meeting in March to make a selection, which will be announced in May. That's all from us this week.
Excellent. Thank you for all those highlights.
Yeah.
I'm considering joining you on Sunday.
Not joining me. You can join them.
The other 8 souls, yes. Crazy or sane. Yeah.
Great. And we also talked about you can just come tip a toe, or dip a toe in if you want. That's okay.
It still costs though, right?
Depends on the weather is on Sunday, right?
Yes. Thanks so much for being here. And on to board business, we have our reports, start time update. Larry Wall is going to lead us through a presentation about next steps and what we've learned so far. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm going to be giving you an update on start time as well as K-12 library tonight. Preparations are continuing for our change, and just to remind everybody of the student start and end times, the elementary student day will go from 7:45 to 2:15, the secondary day 8:45 to 3:15, and every time we talk about this, I think it's really important that we remember the why, because this is a significant lift for all of us in the district, and this work is really guided by that American Academy of Pediatrics report that recommended secondary schools don't start any earlier than 8:30. The New York School Boards Association issued a policy statement within the last year that endorsed that, and there is a term that came up again and again that this is a modifiable risk factor. It's something that we can do for our secondary students that has a documented impact for the better. Just a couple of slides on elementary and secondary. For the elementary, our Wonder Care program is in place, and Kristen Fenton and Aaron Burns, our 2 co-directors, are set to have registration open on March 18th. You can check our website for more specific information about that program. And really what's happening right now, the elementary principals, for example, are using this change to look at how can we fine-tune, not wholesale change, but fine-tune our schedule. And for example, the students will be in the school longer before they have to start to eat lunch. And so a recent conversation was around, well, we have a little bit more time to really dig into our challenging subjects in the morning when the kids are fresh. So that's one example. At secondary, it's about getting very specific in terms of the bell times. So for example, Jim Ginling has been
helping to identify the bell times for the middle schools. We're working on the high school bell times to make sure that we can provide all of the programs, including through BOCES, with our new schedules. Things still to go. Last year, in just contemplating the possibility of this change, and then continuing through this year, we met with the art and music teachers because of the special features of their programs to say, what are some of the things that we might have missed out on? And now that we're through a season, almost 2 seasons of sports, we will do the same thing to meet with our athletic directors and several coaches to say, okay, what are some things that you've experienced so far? What are some problems still yet to solve? We will have a homework conversation in early April. That will be a chance for all of you and for our administrators, for our teachers, for our students to really talk about what are the homework expectations, what type of assignments are students bringing home, how much are they bringing home, and is there a way that we could just improve and make sure that our students are being asked for a reasonable amount and that it's worthwhile. And then finally, the change was announced in August, and lots of people are talking about it, but lots of people are also just going about their lives. And so in anticipation of next year, as the spring continues, we will get that message out again, the reminder that the change is happening. So this concludes the first part of our presentation. Do you have any start time related questions?
I have a question. I just wanted to say that I am really excited about this change, and I think it's really good for our students. And I just can't wait to see all the positive things that happens because of it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Please continue.
Okay.
Thanks.
So, library. We have a lot of changes happening. It's a pretty thrilling time to be connected to the libraries in Webster. This spring, we will be beginning to make changes at Thomas and right here at Spry. And then as a result of the capital improvement project in December, we'll be working on all the remaining libraries in the next few years. So tonight I'd just like to really share with you 3 things: renovation, innovation, and celebration when we think about our libraries. But the library is the academic heart of every one of our buildings, and I thought, if that's the heart, let's do a checkup. And so I put the word out to the librarians and said, I'd like to just come in and ask a simple question: what are you doing in the library today? And one of them said, well, hey, did you know that Krista Gross and Paul Connolly just put together a 1 Webster Minute on State Road? And if you haven't had a chance to check through social media, the 1 Webster Minutes, they're a regular recurring feature. They're a short. Well, that's why it's a 1 Webster Minute. And so this is just about a 2-minute video. The first minute is that 1 Webster Minute from State Road, and then the rest of the video was just captured on Monday at Plank North, at Spry, and Schrader Libraries.
All right, we are headed to the solar system. What's your name?
We put VR goggles on, and we went sort of on a field trip, but not really on a field trip because we were just looking through it, and we saw all the planets. We were looking at the Milky Way and the planets.
We really connected it closely with what they are learning in the classroom, and allows you to act as a scientist and use observation as a scientist and thought, just an excitement about seeing something different than they've ever seen.
I thought today was the best day ever. Today in the library, I'm doing today, I got a book and I'm building this really cool spaceship. Coloring and making cards for my parents. We are picking out books and we're doing activities.
Today I am reading
the book The Lightning Thief for ELA, and I'm working on my social studies map.
I'm working on my ELA.
I'm working on my science homework.
Writing about an article from the news.
I'm also working on LAC, and it is about fake news and what kind of is real, what's not, and ways you can determine which is which.
I am working on my ELA homework titled The Catcher in the Rye.
I'm just filling out mid-year grades for my colleges that I applied to.
I'm working on my business math.
Yep, they were getting books, but they were doing an awful lot of other things as well. Sorry, let me just stop it here. Please stand by. I'm trying to make it go away. Thank you, Paul. Okay. Back to full screen. Sorry about that, folks.
That's okay.
Okay. So, as I said before, shorter term, Thomas and Spry. Longer term, elementary libraries, Schrader and Willink. And this week, I have been deep in preparations again. Labella has a great program where they put together those drawings for you to offer the capital improvement project. And those drawings are now in front of the librarians and principals. And the staff from Labella are saying, how do you like this? What do you think of this? What did we miss? Another part of that, which happened a year ago with students from Spry and from Thomas, and teachers from Spry and from Thomas, is we gathered about 15 students, about 10 teachers and administrators, brought them to Labella, and Labella put a whole bunch of images in front of the students and said, what do you like here? What don't you like? And some of the comments from our students, like for instance, there was like a tree house in a library, and the teachers were saying, wow, this would be great. But there was a middle school girl who said, I don't think that would be good. And I said, well, why not? And she said, well, middle school boys, I don't think they could handle that. So that was scratched from the design. Another part of this is that I have traveled with both the elementary librarians and the secondary librarians to college libraries and school libraries over the last year and a half, just to see how things are happening at other places. So the renovations are a huge investment by the district into really supporting the change that you saw in that video, which is, it is not just about going into a place with stacks of books and immovable furniture, but it's really a vibrant and ever-changing place. I just wanted to show you real quickly a couple things on the Thomas plan. If I oriented this so that it is the same as if you were walking in the main doors of Thomas and you're walking down the hall and it's to your left. And if you look, this right here is the current library space. This is the courtyard space, which is going to be opened up for library use. These are closed off right now, which will also be for library use. And there are just a couple things to notice. First of all, it's a really flexible space. Most of the furniture here will be movable, aside from these type of things, which will be fixed around benches. The hallway cuts create cubbies and areas for students to work. And I have to tell you, have you noticed when you visit Thomas, when you go down that main hall, there's that small area with the vending machines with the high-top tables? There are always students there, and they're always acting appropriately, even though they're not supervised. And this will provide more of those spaces for students to gather and do their work together. A couple other highlights. There will be a coffee shop up here. This will be for students with their Chromebooks. They can come in from the hall or from here to get repaired. And it really is making this into not only the geographic center of the school, but the academic center as well. Here's one of those models for the elementary libraries. These are the images that the elementary librarians and principals are looking at right now and responding to things like, is the countertop high enough? What do you think of these movable shelving units. And then they did each one of our libraries in a different theme, and it's been interesting because one theme was neighborhood, another theme was camping, and all the librarians were a little scared, like, does this have to be our theme? And they said, no, we just wanted to give you different ideas from which to choose. And we'll end up with great spaces that are not only usable by our students, but a little bit customized for each one of the buildings. In terms of innovations, the American Association of School Libraries have come out with new standards, and as you can imagine, they're pretty complex and complicated. But I wanted to give you the 4 domains that all the standards are expressed through: think, create, share, and grow. And if you just think about those 4 words and that as a definition of what a library can be, to think, to create, to share, and to grow, we need to change the way they look to support those 4 processes, and that's what we're doing. Another thing is really new ways to access and use our libraries. Students have Chromebooks, and in the beginning some people thought, well, they won't go to the library anymore because they can just access everything they need on their Chromebooks. You're nodding your heads. Yes, they can't get their books, they can't get their excitement and thrill for reading from their Chromebooks, but our librarians now can travel to their classrooms and they can show them how to. One of the best lessons I saw this year was a librarian went into a classroom and showed second graders, I think, how to check the catalog, how to reserve a book before they went. And then they said, well, can we go get it now? And they were able to leave the classroom and go get their books. So here's one example of something that was happening at Plank North. This is the column challenge, and I love the faces on these 2 kids. This is connected to the 2nd grade Ancient Civilizations unit, and they did columns that they built as a rectangle, which only held a book, maybe, or as a circle, which spread out the force, and this one held, I think she said, 12 books. This is another use of our libraries. And we've got an awful lot to celebrate. Maybe 2 weeks ago, I went to the East Arundecoit Public Library along with a busload or 2 of our students from Willink. Candace Lucas, the librarian at Willink, has been doing this Newbery competition. Newbery is a children's book award that occurs each year. And our students from Willink, students from, Calkins Road, Barker Road in Pittsford, and Johanna Perrin in Fairport, they have a competition to see which of these books, they read the books, they critique them, and they have their own nominations. And then this was a gathering of the students from the 4 schools to see which ones won in our group. They even had an insider, a librarian at Arundecoit, was one of the judges on the Newbery competition, and so he shared some of his stories about what happens in that competition. And the kids were just so excited. A couple other things that are happening right now. Well, coming up, all of the elementary schools will be doing March Book Madness, which is gets at the enthusiasm of the basketball brackets with books. Schrader Reads, our new librarian at Schrader, Jen Streggy, had 2 student authors come in and do a book reading. And my favorite part about that was somebody said, well, when did you decide you wanted to write a book? And they said, well, in August. And they published it. And I guess it's pretty good. And then finally, you all had a chance to do the Hour of Code last year, I think, with Gretchen Pulver and Dave Gorski. And I checked in with Gretchen, and she said this year, her 5th graders, who are in their 3rd year of doing the Hour of Code, had a chance to select challenging or really challenging. And almost all of them chose the most challenging problem, and almost all of them were able to finish within the hour given. And that's just a picture of that happening, not in the library, but in the cafetorium. And that's another example of the way our libraries spread out the learning. Questions?
I think, Marie, I want to start with you. Do you have any questions that you want to ask? Or?
Excited.
Okay.
This sounds great.
Okay.
Dave? Okay. Jan?
Okay.
I only have one thing to add. On a personal level, I'm experimenting with the early start times with my nieces. I'm babysitting for my sister in Canandaigua, and that's their school start time. So I can tell you that sticking to the schedule absolutely works. I've got it down, but this is when they get up. This is just the way their schedule is, and it just causes me to think that whenever there have been changes in the past, people's schedules became that schedule. You know, things have always changed and evolved, and we feel really confident that we're moving in a good direction, and know that there are many, many parents who are very supportive of this, and teachers and staff as well. So thank you for your work.
Yep, thank
and
you.
your patience.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. I do. Can we please have a motion to accept this report, this updated report? Maria and Sue, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you, unanimous. And now moving on, we are going to, oh, I'm sorry, superintendent's report.
Thanks, Tam. It's been an amazing week in our district for our outstanding music and fine arts program. The week started with the curtain going up on the very first of our musicals as Willink Drama Club presented The Wizard of Oz last weekend. And as you can see from these pictures, even sub-zero temperatures and even a cold day that we had last Thursday didn't keep these kids from breaking a leg. And over 110 students were involved, from stage crew to soundboard to all the ensemble and the lead actors and actresses. It was pretty amazing. Now, next up is Webster Schrader's performance of Anything Goes. Now, that is opening in 6 minutes over at Schrader Auditorium, and you can also catch the show tomorrow night at 7:30 and on Saturday at 2 o'clock matinee, and also again a 7:30 performance. And if you guys remember, a year ago we had our board meeting at Schrader, and then we went to Les Mis as a board, as a team, and it was pretty amazing. This year, we're going to see the Thomas musical. So tickets for the Schrader musical are on sale at Wegmans and online at websterschradermusicals.com. And on March 8th and 9th, so that's in 29 days, it's Spry Middle School's production of Guys and Dolls. And then at the end of March, it's the Webster Thomas Players presentation of Cinderella. So be sure to check out the website, websterschools.org, for ticket information. Next, we have exciting news from our Fine Arts Department regarding our art students. I'd like to congratulate 56 of our high school art students, and of course their teachers who work with them, past and present, on winning a total of 94 Scholastic Art Awards this year. So since 1923, the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards have recognized the vision, ingenuity, and talent of our nation's youth and provided opportunities for creative teens to be celebrated. There are 3 levels of awards. There's Gold Key, Silver Key, and Honorable Mention. 14 of our students received a total of 15 Gold Key awards and will be moving on to have their artwork judged on a national level. Our district's artists also received 28 Silver Key and 51 Honorable Mentions, and again, 94 art awards this year. That's pretty amazing. And lastly, a reminder for some of the youngest and also the newest members of our One Webster community, kindergarten orientation and registration is coming up later this month for the 1920 school year. Parents of incoming kindergartners can attend orientation and registration night on Tuesday, February 26th, beginning at 6:30 p.m. at their child's school. After that date, kindergarten registration is available February 27th through March 1st, that's Wednesday through Friday, from 9:30 to 3 o'clock, also at your child's school. And if you would like more information, please visit our website and click on our central registration page, which is under the Departments tab. I can't wait to welcome approximately 620, Mr. Freeman? Whatever, between 620, 650 new 5-year-old kindergartners next fall. That ends my report.
Thank you very much. And if you'd like to continue the first draft read of the school calendar for 2019-20.
The first draft. So for the last 8 years, we have actually had 2 superintendent conference days in the last week of August. And next year, the way that the calendar is rolling out, we actually will not have those days in August. We're actually going to have our 2 teacher days right after Labor Day, the Tuesday and Wednesday. So it's a very traditional schedule. And our students will have a 2-day work week. So our students will be going to school Thursday and Friday, right after Labor Day. And then as you look through that calendar for that first read, we have the traditional, Wednesday before Thanksgiving. We have 2 full weeks at Christmas time. The February break is still in there, as is the April break. And then graduation isn't as late as it is this year. This year's graduation is on June 30th. Next year in 2020, it'll be June 28th. So it's still relatively late, which is, again, when it's that late, it allows us to have some of that flexibility with starting with teachers after Labor Day. So that's the first read.
Okay, thank you.
I will just express my disdain for having graduation the same week as 4th of July.
Change the year after it should change.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And moving on, may we please have a motion to accept the first read of the 2019-20 school calendar?
I'll make that motion.
In a second.
Second by Linda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Thank you. Motion carries. Moving on to the transportation contract ratification. Carmen, Brian Freeman are going to speak to that.
Sure. I'd like to start by thanking our partners with the transportation unit and their negotiating team for working with Dave Swinson and myself for the better part of 4 months to get the contract, where we think it is a very win-win for both sides. Some stability. It's a 5-year contract between the district and the unit. It was ratified by their membership on January 24th. They had a vote that day. We have some healthcare changes, moving to a deductible plan as the base, with salary increases that are pretty standard across the board. I think the most important thing about this contract is as I think on a daily basis, NYSBA or Monroe County School Boards is sending out something to everybody about the bus driver shortage that is going on. I think it's even worse right now than the substitute shortage that we're seeing. This contract keeps us competitive against our neighbors moving forward, while also looking at some of the district's long-term interests as well. So I think it's a very win-win contract for both sides, and just want to, reiterate again, we had thanking their negotiating team for being open to new ideas and listening and, being productive with every meeting that we had.
Just a quick notice of something. It says bus monitors shall be eligible for insurance as outlined above if they work in other capacities.
Correct.
Do we have many drivers that do that?
It ebbs and flows. It's the monitors. So a monitor that might be assigned to a run with students with disabilities, they could only be monitoring for, 4 hours. So we created an MOU with the transportation organization probably almost 2.5, 3 years when we started hiring and looking to bring back some of the those specialized runs, that as long as that person works in another capacity for the district, say they go work as a cafeteria aide or in food service, we will provide benefits. So that's creating 2 part-time jobs in 2 different areas, make one whole.
Any other questions, observations? Okay, can we have a motion, please, to accept the contract ratification as presented? By Jan, second by Sue. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you. And moving on, the next item on our agenda is a tax cap overview,
Sure.
and Brian will lead us.
Thank you. Paul, are you gonna bring that up? Okay. Okay. So in front of you in the packet is the overview of what our tax cap will be. First question I want to answer for everybody is, you'll notice automatically in 1920, why is it starting less on the tax cap than what we finished 18-19 with? And that was a change a couple years ago, or the comptroller said, every year in August, we have to re-levy old taxes that have been missed for clerical errors. So we have to subtract those the following year because we can't double up on that as part of the cap. So you see every year when we start, it's less than what we said our cap would be at the end of last year. So I just wanted to make sure I clarified that for everybody. Okay, a couple things. I wanted to point out the capital exemptions you see in the formula. That is when I talk about why do we plan our capital projects? Because we try to keep those as stable as possible. So you want the number at the top, which right now you see the capital is 2.4 million, and then at the bottom it's 2.3 roughly. We want those to be as equal as possible every year, so they kind of negate each other, so it stays stable, so there isn't large fluctuations in the tax cap, because that would do that. Okay. You see pilots are neutral. That also helps with fluctuations in the tax cap, $1.25 million, both this year and next year. So that is taken into account in this formula. Two other things to point out. You see our growth factor is 1.4. That is the fourth highest in the county. What is that? That is pretty much year-to-year assessment growth for the district. So we see 1.4 as the tax-based growth factor as a percentage. The CPI, which everybody says is the cap, when you think, what's the tax cap, 2%, 2%, that is just one part of this formula. So it actually, this year was higher than 2%. So it is the, go ahead, okay. So it is the lower of 2% or whatever is higher. So all in told, our cap right now is at 3.19% for next year. I don't envision too many changes happening. Could be some immaterial changes if the legislation changes anything going forward, but we're pretty, thank you. So, but we're pretty well set in that. I'll notify the board if anything changes, but this is in essence what we will be going to the, into the comptroller system with, that is due March 1st. Okay. This will also keep us, all residents, eligible for the property tax relief credit for this year as well. That would happen in the fall.
Any questions? That was just for information only. And move on to the governor's budget proposal.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to put together a few slides because it's fairly important to the beginning part of our budget process. So really going to focus in on 5 kind of key areas that the governor touched on that I think will have the most impact if they get through for us. Foundation aid, the governor is proposing a consolidation of categorical aids, a change to building aid, some school safety, and possible tax cap changes. So first, foundation aid proposal. Overall, it's a $338 million increase across the state. And that's why I like to say it's new aid. It's not anything that districts have spent and are getting money back for it. This is just fresh money into the educational system. It's a 1.9% increase statewide. You can see of the $338 million, $202 million of it is going to New York City. So not too much left over for the rest of the state in that increase. There were no changes to the formula, no updates. So if the formula actually ran as is, Webster would get $6.4 million more in aid. This year, as the governor has proposed in capping the formula, The minimum increase was 0.25% that a district can get over last year. Ours was just a little bit above that, 0.31%, which is $90,698. So that is our foundation aid increase for next year as proposed, a smidge over the minimum. So to me, though, what is the biggest possible budget impact that could happen to us is this categorical aid consolidation. So this would begin in the 2020-21 budget year. So we were thinking this is a whole nother budget cycle out beyond 1920, but why does it impact us like today if this goes through? So it would combine BOCES aid, transportation, and all of our textbook software hardware aids. That's about 25% of our total aid, okay? And so all of these aids are based on expenditures from the prior year. So if they're capping in 2021, this is the first year, it means in 1920, that is the year they're gonna determine the cap off of. So whatever our total aid is in 1920, we'll get a multiplier, say it's CPI or something like that. So they'll take the 1920 total, add whatever factor, and that's our new aid for 2021. Well, 1920 is based on 1819 actual expenditures. So what we're spending right now in this budget year has a possibility of impacting us forever if that has happened. So that's something we got to pay close attention to, because that's BOCES and transportation are very large aid categories for us. Okay. What is not included is building aid or aid for students with disabilities. That makes up another 25% for us, but the building aid has its own separate changes. Any questions on that before I move forward? That's a big one.
Were these, were these from the state made before Governor Cuomo said we're going to be in a big budget deficit?
Yes, he's actually tried something similar to this, proposed it in a couple years. This is the first one where I've seen extreme detail too, of like breaking down all the aid categories into this kind of services aid. This is the first time it's had that level of minutia. So it kind of makes me feel like it's a little bit more serious this time.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So building aid. This will begin with projects approved after 7/1/19. This is going to impact us because we just voted in December, and so we will have the projects that we voted on in December impacted directly by this if it goes through. So building aid would be reduced by about 10% for us. And some of the incidental costs that are allowed, so our architectural fees, our engineering fees, our construction management, those are all called incidental costs to the project. It's not a cost of construction, but we still receive aid because they're necessary services. Any kind of testing we get done, like water testing, ground testing, bedrock testing, any of those things are all considered incidental. Those would be restricted, so we'd get less aid on some of those services. The building aid incentive would go down as well, eliminate a building aid ratio, and we would lose an estimated 10% in aid based on this new model. So what we said to voters in December would no longer hold true because of any of these changes. It would be nice if they were making changes like that. It would be if it would say if voter approved beyond the date, but it would be anything that's in the queue right now, which could be anywhere from a year back. So some not positive changes with building aid. 3 safety and security proposals. I'm just going to really focus on the bus cameras and fines and how that would work out. There isn't a lot of detail on that one, but it seems to have picked up some steam. It's not eligible for transportation aid, so somehow a district would have to come up with the money on the front end, but we would recoup those costs by receiving the fines paid by whatever the cameras catch. So a lot more administrative headache with that, and so it'd be, see what would come of that if it does. But a seatbelt requirement for children under 16 on school buses, that would be new. That would be one difficult to police, I think, from a bus driver perspective. I'm not sure how right, how thrilled the high school students would be. So, you know, we'll see. Sounds good in politics, though. Hey, everybody's got to wear their seatbelt now. But in practice, would it really go through? So just take a look at the numbers. I'm going to break those down. I want to focus on 3 state revenue lines for you, and I've highlighted. You see our big $90,700. I rounded there. Those 3 lines, the private access costs, the BOCES aid, and transportation aid. All 3 of those are based on expenditures. And so when the governor is running his numbers here, it's all based off of numbers from September. We haven't even hardly started our school year, so those are just estimates, and their numbers aren't great. And then when we redo estimates in December, that's when we get our legislative numbers. But when we finalize our budget, you will see these numbers change, because we'll be based off of my projections of where I think we're actually going to finish the year in true expenditures. Also wanted to point out here, you'll see a huge increase in building aid of $914,000. We have the same increase on our debt service. Remember, we try to match those. As you can see in the property tax cap, we're only $100,000 off. So we're actually getting a little bit more aid next year than we do have debt. So that's why that $120,000 difference on that tax cap formula. That's why we try to match up what we borrow to how much aid is coming in. So you see that increase, that helps offset the increase in the debt coming on the books. Any questions on the numbers, what the governor's proposed? Really, the foundation aid is the big one. Okay, my one takeaway from this presentation for everybody tonight is that $90,700 number, so it sticks with us as we go through the budget cycle of what new state aid that is proposed for the district. Has no, remember, foundation aid has no attachments to it. If you wanted to, this is the money that's, you wanted to add another teacher at first grade, you use foundation aid. It's not specific, it doesn't have a category like transportation, like building, like excess cost, or instructional materials. So that this is like our general money for programming. So, any questions?
Okay. Yeah. No, it doesn't. No.
I'll say, I have a lot to say. But I am just going to say, don't hurt yourself, Andrew.
Okay, thank you for that. And moving on, the federal audit report.
Sure, we have 2 audits for board approval tonight. The first is our extra classroom, extracurricular accounts. And actually, I think it's one of the cleanest audits we've had in the extracurricular area, which is normally a problem headache for us. So I think that a big shout out goes to our 4 central treasurers at the secondary buildings for doing a great job of really assisting and helping the advisors and the students on the process and getting the paperwork the auditors like to see, getting that done and completed. So very good extra class audit. And so, you know, just a couple things this year. And actually there's more things we corrected from last year on the audit than there were new issues that popped up. So overall good. In federal audit, you can see absolutely no issues whatsoever on the federal programs, especially on the school lunch program. We're utilizing our federal dollars as they were intended to as part of the national lunch program.
Thank you. Can we have a motion to accept the report on the extra classroom activity audit report and corrective action plan? So moved by Dave and second by Linda. All in favor?
Aye.
And we will also need a motion to accept the report on the single federal audit report and corrective action plan as well. By Maria and a second by Dave. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, motion carries. Thank you, Brian. And continuing?
Yep, sure.
Treasurer's report of December
Just
2018.
a quick minute on the treasurer's report and a couple of other reports. Just want to point out on the treasurer's report, if you did a year-to-year comparison, on the second page where it says school lunch fund, you're seeing a lot larger balances. We're actually happy to report our breakfast program now at all 11 buildings is doing wonderfully well for supporting the food service program. And this year, we actually have seen increased participation in the lunch program. We're not seeing the loss of students getting away from the school lunch like we had in the previous 3 years. So we've actually seen a small uptick there in participation, so we're pretty excited about that. And we're actually in the process of drilling down to see is it a specific menu item, what's behind that. So.
Thoughts on that?
The salads are, I mean, as more and more of the high school classes get into the greenhouse, especially on the general science classes, and they're getting in there, you're seeing those. I think kids are actually buying those more now because they know where it comes from.
It's excellent. It's completely the goal behind the aquaponics program. Wonderful.
And then on the revenue report, just want to point out for everybody, if you noticed, our Medicaid is outpacing last year, so we're doing a much better job at capturing those federal dollars as part of that program, I think, really leaving no stone unturned.
Thank you for that as well. Can we have a motion, please, to accept the treasurer's report for December?
So moved.
By Jan, second by Linda. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, motion carries. And a motion as well for the revenue and expense report.
So moved.
Thank you, second by Dave. On to the budget transfer report.
So that's just the quarterly update to show where we've transferred money around. This came out of an audit a couple years ago that we had done it once a year. The auditors recommended doing it 4 times a year with the board. So if there's any questions, feel free to ask.
And that requires a motion as well to accept that report.
I'll make that motion.
Sue, second by Dave. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes. And on to Sue for the first reading of policy 5040 attendance zones.
Yes.
No, there was a...
Okay, we do want to make a change here. I don't know if we want to move it to our next, if we want to continue with the first read. This is what we're proposing. You see the 2 items in red?
Mm-hmm.
We want to eliminate the second one. We want to pick the first one. That's our selection. But we also want to have the first bullet is actually an exception to the rule, so we want that to go after the rule. So the first paragraph would stay the same. The second paragraph would actually be the third paragraph. Fourth paragraph would go away. So, see what it's becoming confusing. So I'm thinking we should probably just make the changes, do the first read at our next meeting. So Cindy, how about if I mark it up and I'll give it to you, and then people have a chance to.
March 7th.
Yeah, March, actually, I think it's the 14th.
Oh, 14th.
Right, because the 7th is the
workshop.
budget workshop.
Okay.
So, do you think it's a problem to wait that long? I wouldn't know. It shouldn't be a problem. Correct, Brian? Shouldn't be a problem to wait that long. Okay.
I don't think so.
All right, why don't we do that then? So nothing to vote on here.
Okay.
We just decided that the last hour.
Decided to wait to vote.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, and on to old business and our board reports, school liaison reports. If we want to go around the room and start with Maria.
Sure. DeWitt Road third graders were recognized on Channel 8's Honor Roll and Channel 13's Bright Spot a few weeks ago for their generosity and kindness. The students donated books to people in need through the YWCA of Greater Rochester. And before the books were delivered, students at DeWitt wrote messages on stickers, which were then placed on the inside front covers. DeWitt Square Dancing Night was held on January 11th and was very well attended. And I would like to also say congratulations to Willink 7th grader, oh, I don't think she's in 7th grade, right? Yeah, she is right now. Katie Ryder, and Schrader's 9th grader, Emerson Orman, because they were recognized by the DNC for publishing their first novel called Our Wendy. And DeWitt's next PTSA meeting will be held on Monday, February 11th at 6:30.
Thank you for that. Dave?
Unfortunately, due to my surgery, I was not able to
Attend Plank North, yes. And Jan, what would you like to share?
I really have little to share because I reported on January 17th about Plum North PTSA, and they haven't met until this coming Monday, the 11th. People are welcome, 6:30 at Plum North. But I do know the Plum North dance was held just this last Friday, and it was at Schrader. So I'm anxious to hear results of that. And the next big function is the Winter Carnival on Friday, March 29th.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Sue?
For Schlegel Road, tomorrow night is the Me and My VIP dance, 5:30. All are welcome. Their next PTSA is not until March 19th, and on Thursday, February 28th, is their open house and book fair.
Thank you. And for State Road, tonight actually is their open house, K5. Nerf night was Friday night on the 3rd. Spirit Wear sale is ongoing, and on the 9th, there's a meeting in the community room of the Webster Public Library to discuss the science fair, and the theme is liquid science. The next meeting is March 12th.
Plank South, their meeting was held last night. It was actually one of the most attended meetings that I've been to, which was awesome. There were probably 6 or 7 fifth graders there as well, and they were able to give reports on some of the activities that they are doing. Namely, they had a Celebrating Esperanza Day. They've completed the book Esperanza Rising, and they celebrated Mexican heritage. They made dolls. They ate fruits and vegetables that were, the chapters in the books are different fruits and vegetables, and so they tried papayas and raw onions. It was very cute. They had a dancer come in and teach them some dance, so that was really awesome. The science fair is coming up March 20th. It is the 40th anniversary of the science fair. Some of the judges have been judging for 40 years, so, and they've asked a number of old teachers that were there when it first started to come back and also judge. So it should be a really, really great showing this year. Literacy night, like Sue said, was last week. That really is a great, great showing. I was able to go. There were about 190 students that were there, and they traveled through 3 different stations, 3 different countries in an hour and a half. And it's a great shout out to the teachers. It's a lot of preparation, but it is a wonderful event. So that was fun. And there's roller skating coming up. The Kids Heart Challenge, which was used to be Jump Rope for Heart, is also coming up. So that's Plank South. At Spry, their meeting will be this coming Wednesday. They are working on grade level after school or evening activities. The 8th graders just had a semi-formal not too long ago. So 6th and 7th graders are working on something for them to do as a group together. And last week they had World Read Aloud Day, and they had several mystery readers, and that was a really cool experience. You're never too young or too old to read a children's book. It was a great experience. And then at Schrader this morning, Principal Benz had a breakfast with the parents, and it was fairly well attended. It was an open forum, and Officer Hurley was there, and the topic was vaping. And it was educating parents on vaping. And it was astonishing to see how many parents did not realize how dangerous vaping is. It was a really, really powerful hour to spend. He is looking at doing it at other times of day, because obviously it was at 9 o'clock in the morning with many people working. So he's going to try to do it at different times of the day, but continue to get that message out there, how serious this problem is. So that was that.
Thank you for that. And Central PTSA, I know you were able to go.
Yep, I was there. Yep, they are actively looking for key leadership positions. Stacy and Allison, their 2-year tenure is done, so they are looking to fill that space. Nobody has come forward yet, so that will be ongoing. Hopefully somebody will be. Oh, did they? Oh, that's exciting. Good to know. Community Arts Day, they are working on that. And Dr. James Wallace, who is an adolescent psychiatrist at the UR, will be coming in. I'm not quite sure what the date was because they didn't have a definitive date, but he is going to be speaking to parents on perfectionism. Does that sound, yeah? So yeah, they didn't have a lot of information, but they are working with Wen on that to bring him in to speak. So that will be really exciting. And then they're also working to have Sweethearts and Heroes come in, possibly at the elementary schools. It's an anti-bullying, how to be a good friend program. It's a really great. Yeah, it comes to East Irondequoit every year. It's a really great program. So they've been working hard on that. So hopefully that will come to fruition as well.
Great, thank you. A lot of good things happening. Moving on to Monroe County School Board Association Legislative Committee just hosted the legislative breakfast on Tuesday. I know several people were.
Saturday.
On Saturday, right?
Last Saturday.
On Saturday, yes. We're able to be there in attendance, so thank you for being there. You want to share anything back?
We had 5 board members who were there. I'm very happy to say, Carm. We had a little over 90 people representing 20 of the 23 school districts. We had all our lawmakers, or most of them, or they sent an aide. Senator Joe Morelli came too, which was nice. It was a format in which, for example, there were 4 or 5 of us at the table I was at with Mark Johns. And I don't know who you were at the...
I was with Congressman
Morelli. And so while you were having a continental breakfast, there was an opportunity to ask different questions, and we had been given wonderful sheets from the legislative committee on questions and to keep people on track on foundation aid and tax cap and all kinds of things. And then the last hour was a panel up front of all of our lawmakers, representatives, and there were questions from the audience. So I think that was very good. And then yesterday was the legislative meeting for the county, in which there was some conversation about this and also some planning, because the follow-up to this is there's a bus trip on March 4th and 5th, in which school board members from here will go to Albany and will have meetings with a lot of our legislators. I know Cindy put something out about it, and yesterday I talked with Becky Schultz, and she said that they will need to have hotel reservations by February 14th. So she's anxious to hear who's going from what board members. So if people are interested, the other slight change they've made is that they won't be leaving. When they do the one-day trip in December, they leave at, 100 or something, but they're leaving at, 10 a.m. 10 a.m., so it's much more palatable to many people, so, and then they'll stay overnight and they'll come back on the 5th.
Thank you.
Yep.
So if anybody's interested, please let Cindy know as soon as possible, if March 4th to 5th. Or OGOD 100, either one. Either one will do. And moving on to labor relations, back to Linda.
We haven't had a meeting since our last meeting. The next one will be February 27th, and it will be all about bus drivers. Then the shortage and minimum, there'll be an update on the minimum wage impact, so looking forward to that.
Thank you. And for information exchange, the next meeting is February 13th, and the topic is Race is an Ace. So this is building on the theme of diversity within the Monroe County School Board Association. So that should be a very interesting meeting as well. And the executive committee, the symposium that we had attended had been rescheduled from November 28th. So we're looking forward to rescheduling that, and it may end up being a Saturday morning. You can imagine it's difficult to get all those schedules together, but we might be able to go.
Maybe.
We'll see. Yeah. Moving on to our own committees, audit. I know we just approved a couple reports. Sue, do you have anything you'd like to add?
We haven't had a meeting recently.
Okay.
Till spring.
And policy in all capital letters.
Yes, we had a meeting today, and actually we got through quite a bit. We only have a little bit of work to wrap up for our planned discussions. We want to have our next meeting, maybe Cindy could check the calendar. We're thinking March 14th, right before that meeting at 5 o'clock. And then we'll probably, based on what we're hearing with some new laws that might be coming into effect and new recommendations about this and that, that we may have to have a couple more meetings, maybe in the summer-ish kind of thing. But yeah, everything's going good and getting our work done.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, thank you.
Yes, it's a lot of fun.
It is.
Budget advisory. I know our first meeting had to be canceled.
And a Valentine's Day black tie affair next Thursday.
Excellent. Okay. Please make your reservations with Brian Freeman.
Sweethearts and heroes.
Which one is it? Moving on, strategic planning.
Yes. We had a meeting last week and we went over the questions for our biannual school and community surveys, and they will be conducted mid-March through early April, so please be on the lookout for that. And then there's something else coming on board called a virtual suggestion box where people can leave comments for the board on the website, and that'll be up and running in the next month or so.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, This takes us to our consent agenda. Everyone's had a chance to review all the documents contained therein. Can we please have a motion to accept the contents of the consent agenda?
So moved.
By Jan, second by Dave. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous, motion carries. Which brings us to our adjournment. Our next meeting will be February 14th. We're going to be training with Brian Zimmer on Google Docs. That'll be a workshop meeting upstairs. And with that, can we have a motion to adjourn? So moved by Dave, second by Maria. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a good night.
Thank you.